Okay. So yes, the phrase that there's a book in all of us is one of the things that sort of triggered this session. But obviously, Jennifer has written 3 books, and one of them was on Chief Risk Officer, which is what we spoke about on the podcast. So all go and have a listen to that, because obviously we cover a lot of different things, including Jen's great career, which has been an interesting journey as well. So welcome to today's REV-UP session. As most of you know, we try to have one REV-UP session at least per month, and these are included in the membership fee with Risky Women. And we're trying to bring many different elements together in the membership. So from live events like the one that was in Dubai and Hong Kong, and we've done things in London, and also to look at how we can build on the Risky Women already amazing superpowers. So as most of you hopefully know, I'm Kimberly Cole. I'm the Chief Risky Woman, and I'm thrilled to be able to moderate the session today. And I see this as a bit of a conversation with Jennifer. So you can all jump in, ask questions, share, thoughts and ideas, either live or if you want to in the comments. But I think seeing we're a relatively small group, it should be possible for you just to, stick your hand up and say, hey, I've got a question on that. So before we start, hopefully you've also all signed up for Risky Women on all the social channels, so Instagram, X, and joined the LinkedIn group. And also make sure that you've signed up for our newsletter. So go to our website and you'll get our RAW, as in ROAR, I am woman, hear me raw, newsletter, so that you don't miss anything that's going on from the podcast to the events, etc. And today's session really starts our series on writing skills and our aim to grow our leadership, our thought leadership capability. And we've got Sundari on here too, who is going to do a session for us on business storytelling, which is just coming. And we're going to bring in lots of different angles. And the aim is that we are also then going to culminate in a writing skills competition. And we'll announce more of the details of that shortly. We're partnering with Boville on that so that we can give some fun prizes. And we're also looking at all different channels that we can potentially publish people's thought leadership on. So as I said, all of these sessions are aimed at how we add skills and knowledge to our already talented professionals in the network. And the aim of them is to amplify our voice and messages from the women in the network. Some of this was sort of driven by the statistics that I saw that were from the Women in Media Gender Scorecard in Australia. But if you look at similar studies in the UK or the US, it shows that women are severely underrepresented in terms of media coverage as both sources and experts in their field. So it found that women account for 43% of bylines that are written. Hang on, we'll let Lucy back in. Yeah, that women only account for 43% of bylines written, with men featured disproportionately as 70% of quoted sources and 66% of experts. So hopefully some of what we do in these sessions will help us address that imbalance. So let me introduce Jennifer Geary, for those of you who have not met Jennifer before, but hopefully you have heard some of what she said on the podcast. And I know Lucy's already a bit of a fan and has read the book, so that's good. So Jennifer's got over 25 years of experience in finance, technology, risk, and legal across diverse industries, from financial services to not-for-profit. She's been a managing director EMEA for a software company and COO and CRO for a number of fintechs. She's also worked in major banks such as Santander and Barclays, and was also COO for Save the Children UK. She is an author, as we have mentioned, of a wide range of business books. Her first book was How to Be a Chief Operating Officer, and then she followed that with How to Be a Chief Risk Officer, and then with How to Be a Chief People Officer, which she did in collaboration with an HR professional. So that's another interesting thing for us to talk about. So Jennifer, welcome. Great to have you here. We've just said you've written 3 books, amazing achievements. Did you always think that you would write a book or three?
So good morning, good evening. I'm on coffee, Kimberly. I don't know what you've got going there. Probably something else at the end of your day. But you know,
Tea.
thank you. See, okay, right. Well, cheers. Thank you all for being here today. And I just want to echo what Kimberly said. This is for you. So let's make this, let's get your questions answered as we go through all of this. To answer your question, Kimberly, no, I did not always want to be a writer. I did not think I was going to be a writer. English in school was not my favorite subject, and in fact, probably one of my less favorite subjects. And so the writing came, it was really born out of a particular need. So, I mean, you've touched on my career. So, I mean, I started, I trained as a chartered accountant. For what it's worth, I did all the mathsy, sciencey subjects in school, like, you know, where I had a choice, like I didn't do the writing, you know, so there's hope for us all. So, you know, I was sort of 15, 20 years having worked in financial services, and I had at that point, like I had done when I went to my first COO job, I'd done a pretty good job of vacuuming up experience along the way that I thought was going to be useful. I had been chief of staff to a COO. I had the finance background, I had technology project delivery, I had risk, and I had a little bit of legal. So I mean, you think it's not bad, right? But when I went into my first COO role, I could not believe the breadth of the roles that I was being asked to embrace. And in fact, I counted 16 different functional disciplines that I needed to have. And when I don't know how to do something, maybe like many of you, I go on to Amazon and I buy the book and I research and I dig deep, and my husband despairs at the number of books there are around the house and that sort of thing. But to my surprise and disappointment, there was no book on the role of COO. So what I had to do for the areas that I felt less strong in, I had to individually research those functions. I had to tap up my network. I had to take people for a coffee. I had to like download and pick up as much as I possibly could to get myself to a point where I was at least with a working, competent knowledge of what I needed to do in that role. And it was a really big slog. So the book writing kind of came out of necessity. You know, at the end of that role, 3 years later, I thought, well, it doesn't exist. So I wonder if I'm going to write it. And the structure and the idea, I suppose, was born out of that 16 disciplines, right? So I wrote out what they were, and I just thought, well, I wonder if I wrote a chapter on each of them, a kind of a 1,500, 2,000 word kind of essay on what that function is and does, and I'll add in the frameworks, the like the regulation and the frameworks that I'm aware of in there, and I'll write about what looks good, and I'll write about warning signs, and I'll write about 10 questions for a new COO to ask, and I wonder if I got each of those sections checked by somebody, so a finance chapter by the accountant, the legal chapter by a lawyer. Is that a book? Like, is that, would I have the beginning of a book? And I went on a self-publishing course as well, which we'll get into, because I didn't really have a sense why a publishing house would publish me, and I kind of just wanted to do this. There was almost, Kimberly, it was like I still wasn't entirely sure, having done my version of the role for 3 years, I still wasn't entirely sure that was the role. So there was a little bit of me putting this out there and saying to the world, like, tell me I'm wrong. Like, this is what I think the role is, or this has been my experience of the role. Argue back, right? Please tell me. And sometimes somebody would come back and say, well, I don't have this function or that function in my role that you listed. And occasionally someone will come back and go, well, I have like something like R&D that you didn't put in your role. Okay, fine. But actually, largely, it seems to have stood the test of time, and it seems to have been acknowledged and welcomed by people as offering them the framework that I wish I'd had when I was setting out. So that's a very long-winded answer to no, I did not think I was going to be a writer.
And so to that content piece, and then knowing that you had enough content before you started, you use those 16 functional roles. You had some kind of view of the length of each of those chapters and a potential format and structure. And you used your networks in order to validate that kind of structure before you really started putting pen to paper and writing the 1,500 words on each. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the validating the structure, I'd like that sort of came from me. I mean, I did sign up to learn how to self-publish, and I did have a coach who I guess helped me when I wasn't sure what to do. But the structure came very, very naturally to me and logically to me, and it's the one I've mirrored and will probably continue to mirror in my subsequent books, because it just makes an awful lot of sense to me. I start with three pillars, as I call them, of culture, strategy, and execution, because I think whatever your C-suite role, you have to have a really solid understanding of what those are in your organization and how they impact you and how you're going to work within that organizational context. So I start with some sort of diagnostics and ways to think about the culture and strategy of the organization, and then how you are going to put that into execution, how you're going to go from concept to delivery, which I see as one of the key skills of any CXO role. And then I go into, as I said, the technical areas. And then at the end, I talk about things like building your team, how to do that, how to think about how you build out your team and the breadth of resources that you need. Things like how to leverage technology in your space. And then also, I always do a kind of a future looking piece. And so to your question about like, how do I know if I have a book? How do I know if I have enough? The best piece of advice that I was given to help me get started was to mind map the entirety of the subject that you plan to work on. And in my case, from that mind map to derive a table of contents. And if you have a table of contents that looks, like I would say sort of 15 to 20 chapters kind of thing. If you have that, and if you're still feeling energetic about your topic, having done that, if you say, oh, I have to write, there's a bit more here, and that kind of, and if you're feeling kind of buzzy after that, that's a suggestion to me that there is plenty of content for you to write out there. If it's the opposite, it's happened to me sometimes. I start sketching something out and I'm like, nah, it might end up being better as a blog or an article or, something like that. It might not be that fully fledged book. Rule of thumb, and I'll go and contradict it in just one second. General rule of thumb is like a 35,000 word minimum for a book. Actually, I had a publisher say to me yesterday they don't like to go above 40,000 for a business book. Now mine are a bit more than that, but sort of 35 to 40,000 words will get you in terms of a paperback. So this is the thinnest of the three books, but that's about 48,000 words. That's about 100,000 words, right? So if you want, like a book this, to have that sort of size and kind of weight and to be enough of the subject matter, I think that's typically for paperbacks. But as I said, let me contradict that. What we're finding now in the digital world and in the world where we just need to figure out something, it is perfectly acceptable to write a shorter book, especially if it's a digital ebook, right? And especially, I mean, I've read some really useful, just, quite slim volumes on just something, a particular topic that I was looking to get my head around. And the old adage of obviously quality over quantity. So that's what I'd say about like size, content, volume. I started every book going, oh my God, I'm never going to get to 35,000 words. And in the end, I sailed past that, very easily once I got going.
And so you kind of got in the flow. People talk about writer's block. How did you have any writer's block, and would you overcome that?
Oh, totally. Right. There's some days and you sort of sit in front of the laptop and you're like, and that happens to us all. So a couple of things. The structure, just to slightly repeat myself, the structure really helps you, right? There's nothing that says you have to write the book sequentially. So say if I was writing the chief risk officer book or something, and I was like, oh, I just can't face talking about like risk identification today. I'll do the bit about building your team, right? So I would maintain like an Excel spreadsheet of my chapters and the word count in each of them, and I'd start by going, right, what do I feel like talking about today? So that really helps, right? If something isn't coming in a particular area, just write about something else. So that's one. Another really good bit of advice from Liz Gilbert. If you remember, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Yep.
So she would say, you've got to just show up, right? You've got to show up at your laptop, ready to go. Sort of, I think she'd call you sort of, calling on the spirit, saying, look, I'm here, I'm here and getting started, but also to start writing. And even if the first few paragraphs that you write, you end up not using, they're not great or whatever, she calls that clearing your throat, which I think is just so clear. So you're just getting started, right? Just start. And it mightn't be great, and it might, or you might go back and fix it, or you mightn't use it at all, but you've got to just start. So I found those things really useful, both picking an area that I feel like talking about and then just getting going. The other thing I would say, and again, this is for everybody to figure out themselves, is to have that routine of when you write, when you feel the most creative, the most energetic. For me, it's in the morning, ideally before I do anything. So when I wrote these books, and I, try and get the kids out the door to school, and I wouldn't even do things like, shower, get dressed, put on my makeup and that kind of thing, because that's like, I just need to sit and go. And sometimes when it was going well, I'd sort of look up and realize it was midday and I'd just been writing and that sort of thing. So that routine, that schedule of sitting down and doing it regularly.
I think that's really interesting, though, on the structure helping and saying you don't have to write sequentially, which maybe that's certainly for business books. I imagine if you're writing like
Awesome.
a story or a
Yeah.
novel, you probably do need to write
I'm guessing
sequentially.
that's true. Yes. Yes, I should qualify that for sure. Yeah. From a business context.
But that's actually quite useful because that hadn't occurred to me before, but that would be really good to say, okay, so today I'm going to, tackle this bit, but tomorrow I'm going to tackle that, and I might not put them in that order, but I can rearrange them. That's actually really interesting. I hadn't considered that. And
Yeah,
then,
no,
yeah, sorry.
it's totally fine. And just one other thing that I find really useful as well is to have an internal chapter structure. So what I mean by, so you've got your table of contents, and then within that have, obviously you can have an introduction, a summary and that kind of thing. But as I said with COO, the fact that I said, well, I'm going to have frameworks, and I'm going to have warning signs, and I'm going to have good to great, and I'm going to have 10 questions. I mean, it almost feels like filling in the blanks after that, right? Because you don't have to think, well, what am I going to talk about next? It's all in there for you. And that also lends obviously consistency and predictability to the writing for the reader, so they know what they're going to see in each chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And then what kind of tools did you need, like from software? Are you just typing into Word, or have you got other kind of things that you're using that help as well?
So in terms of the writing, and this was a real kind of barrier for me. I was like what do people use? I mean, I assume there was specific software. There is some good writing software out there. There are apps like Scrivener and that kind of thing. I use Word. Editors and typesetters can do all the things that they need to do after that. I mean, and Word in terms of things like headings and references and that kind of thing is perfectly adequate in my experience. I think some of those other tools might be helpful in terms of things like automatically doing that kind of word count and summaries and that sort of thing. But, we're all natives of Word, right? And we just know it, and it's instinctive. And you don't want to kind of be thinking or worrying about the app, right? You want to be focused on your writing. So I've always used Word. I don't love Google Docs personally. I just think it's not quite as functionally rich in terms of things like references and so on. It works, but I've just found it a bit tricky to move across afterwards. As I said, I use Excel for a word count. We can talk in a while. There are marketplaces and things that you can then use to find professional editors and cover designers and typesetters who will then take your product. But you can get started absolutely fine in Microsoft Word and do your writing in there and then take it forward.
And I think poor Lucy's obviously having trouble with her Wi-Fi connection, but she did ask a question, which was, did you write as a full-time job or whilst that you were working elsewhere?
Shall we wait for Lucy to come back to answer her question?
Yeah,
Because
good
she'll,
idea. Yeah, hopefully. I'll watch
yeah,
out for her coming back into the
yeah.
waiting room. But you've also mentioned a couple of times that you used your networks and to check and verify things, which I guess is somewhat to do with making sure that the content, resonates, but also checking your role versus other COO roles, etc. So what recommendations do you have on making sure that, you do have the right people, I guess, surrounding you, or the right experts?
Yeah. So and I think that starts at the very beginning as well, in terms of the subject that you choose to write. So I have used LinkedIn polls, for example, with my network to say, which would you be more interested in reading about, this or this, and that sort of thing. I mean, I think you want to, assuming, if it's a kind of a labor of love and you just want to get something out, well then, like, go ahead and write it. But assuming you want something that's got a degree of commercial success and that people are going to buy, I would start with my network at that very point. And then when it comes to, the other end of the process, yes, obviously you want people to validate individual content. So sometimes there's subject matter experts. We're writing book 4 at the moment on sustainability, and I needed some subject matter expertise in investor relations. And, I'm going to a subject matter expert, and I'm just going to drill them for questions on that. But then there's usually a small number, I would say kind of 3 to 6, of people that once your manuscript is written and pre-editing and that kind of thing, but that you could send to someone and say, what do you think? Like, what have I missed? Does it make sense to you? Is it engaging? What would you change, and that sort of thing? And I think that's, people are usually very happy to help, especially if it's a subject that they're interested in and passionate about. So you want those kind of expert mentors almost to kind of take a look and give, and sometimes they'll come back and say, oh, you should talk about this, or you missed that, or I might nuance that point differently, or whatever. So I find that gave me great comfort, obviously, that to make sure that everything I was saying was going to stand up once it was out in the world at large.
And what about the one that you wrote, the chief people officer one that you did in partnerships with an HR professional? So how did that work?
So I have only been a COO and chief risk officer. So those are the only books that I would presume to write myself, right? So speaking from having done the job, I could not, absolutely would not pretend to write chief people officer or anything or chief sustainability officer on my own. So I found a collaborator who had been head of HR EMEA at Twitter, and is now chief people officer at the Irish flagship airline Aer Lingus. And I got her in a window, and Lucy, I'll come to your point about full-time writing. I got her in a window of sort of gardening leave between roles. She had about 6 months, and that was like my golden moment to zoom in and tap her brain. And so it was a fantastic collaboration with Anne, because I brought the structure that we talked about, right? So I was like, this is the beginning, this is the end, these are the technical, I need you to be the kind of the meat and the sandwich, the technical stuff in the middle, and let's talk about how we structure that. She did the majority of the writing, but I did, sort of a 20-25% of it as well, in terms of my knowledge of how those roles play together. And then obviously I brought the kind of the know-how, how to project manage the whole thing from end to end. So that worked really, really well. And obviously Anne brought with her the huge HR professional network that she had built up over 25 years of peer reviewers and advisors and people to provide case studies and all that sort of thing as well. Lucy, to answer
a good point on that, on the peer review piece as well, and how to use that. Yeah. And yes, to Lucy's question, I shared what the question was, Lucy, which was, did you write full time or while you were working elsewhere? So maybe you can cover that now, June.
So Lucy, I did, and that's because I guess, and I'm sure you all feel this as well, in these really, really busy full-time roles, when I come in the evening, A, my family might like to see me, and B, I'm at that point, I'm not feeling creative. I'm tired. I've made 1,000 decisions that day and all that sort of thing. And I think I would have struggled to juggle it alongside a full-time job. Some people do. A lot of people say if they write in the morning, if they write, like, if they get up and write before they go into work, that's kind of work for them. And obviously there's weekends. I find Sunday morning is a lovely creative time, actually, when things are relatively quiet, and you could probably get a morning's worth of work done there. So it is possible. Of course it's possible. I mean, people do it all the time. I personally found found it, well, you get it written much faster, right? You know, I mean, you get to a finished manuscript an awful lot faster if you can manage that. And sometimes a break between roles is a lovely time to do that.
So I know Sundari's got a couple of questions, so we'll open it up before I keep firing all of my questions.
Thanks so much. And thanks, Jennifer. Really lovely open sharing. I mean, we can feel like we are going through the process with you as you are doing it. So thanks for that. So a couple of questions. One is like, there are, just for example, in the leadership space, yours is a very niche book, as I can see. I haven't read them yet, but just from the title and the way you've structured your content, from what I'm hearing, it's pretty niche. A lot of the times, like say, if you're looking at leadership space, which is the space I'm in, I feel like, oh, there are plenty of leadership books. So how do you decide it's still okay to write your book? While I feel, of course, there's a book inside me. Is there a market for it in some ways? And linked to that, sorry, go on.
No, please answer your question.
Linked to that is also that one of the things, I was speaking with a friend of mine who's written books, and she said, a lot of the times the structure seems to be that you have a huge following, either to your newsletter, to content that you're posting and things like that. And then people seem to be converting it to a book. So is it the horse before the cart before the horse? What do you need to do?
Okay, so like on the first one, I mean, I suppose they are niche in the sense that they focus on a particular role. And what that does kind of mean for me is every time I launch a new book, I almost have to build a new following again, because the person who loved COO may not necessarily buy Chief People Officer, right? So there is that element to it. But I suppose in a way that focus was the antidote to your other point about, well, there's just a million management books out there, right? And how do you differentiate? And I wasn't looking to solve the world with these books. I was looking to kind of answer a particular point for someone on a particular journey, aspiring to a role or new in role, and kind of figuring out how they navigate that. So because you're right, I mean, I think management and leadership is obviously a hugely congested space, and there's some brilliant books in there, but like how do you find them? So that was my approach, I suppose, and the gap that I was looking to fill. So that was the answer to that one. In terms of the cart before the horse, you're right. A lot of people use a book as a sort of a business card for their business, for their consulting business, for their coaching business, and that kind of thing. And that works. I think that works really, really nicely. You've worked in an area for a particular period of time. You've honed your craft, you've got an approach, and you want to kind of solidify that into a book, and it's a very powerful way of doing that, because you're sort of saying, well, look, if you want to know who I am, how I work, like there it all is. And also people love a book. They love a free book. They love to buy it. They like, you put a book down on the table and people are like, oh, there's a book. So it is really effective from that point of view. I suppose I did it slightly differently. Again, I did it because I thought there was a gap that needed to be filled, and so I just wrote it. Now I sort of look at this and ponder where I go next with it. And I've got some thoughts on where I might go with some of this content going forward. So I've probably done it the other way around. But I think because the book fulfilled a need, it was successful as a result. You're right. It's very easy to think like you need to be a celebrity these days, in order to kind of, write a successful book. And certainly, the integration of our social channels and our public presence and everything all help. So I can only say what I did. But yeah, it can be done both ways.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer.
Any other questions around the table? The virtual table? Otherwise, I have more.
Actually, I have, I'm sure you're going to ask, so maybe I won't preempt it in terms of just the process of the publishing and the marketing part as well.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go around the, how do you publish the book? Do you need an expert? And I guess using a publisher versus self-publishing.
Yep. So Let me tell you about the self-publishing journey, and then I'll tell you about, to the best of my knowledge, the difference between going with a publisher, going yourself. So again, I chose self-publishing because I knew nothing about the publishing world. I didn't see why a publisher would just publish little old me. And so I set off to see if self-publishing was an option for me. And you know, the good news is, like so many things nowadays, there are marketplace and apps and platforms and you know, all the supports and tools that you would possibly need to launch a really high quality self-published book. So my books are published on the Amazon platform, which is called KDP, Kindle Distribution Platform. They take care of, they host your book, they issue it via Kindle, they print the paperbacks, just like, you know, anything you order on Amazon, right? You know, you buy it today and it appears in a brown envelope tomorrow. They take care of all of that. And unlike authors of publishing houses, you know, I have a, you know, a website, I have a platform, I go in, I can look at my daily sales, I can, you know, look at my royalty, all that kind of thing. It's all just taken care of on a very intuitive, user-friendly platform. So that's how that bit of it is handled. The downside of exclusively using Amazon, which I do, is the book doesn't appear in Waterstones or WH Smith and that kind of thing. So if you wanted a paperback in the shops offering, you would need to do some other things, which I haven't done. But to be honest, so many of us, you know, I think something like 70% of all book sales worldwide are now via platforms like Amazon and that sort of thing. So I was happy with that, and I was happy to just like let that be my place. In terms of the experts that you need, you know, you absolutely want a professional edit, probably 2 rounds of editing, and possibly proofreading, you know, depending on, there's a few different, you know, approaches that you can do. Professional cover design, professional typesetting. You need an ISBN number, but that's very easy. There's a place you go and you register for an ISBN number. You know, there are some really great platforms like Reedsy, REEDSY, where you can go and you can like find an editor or a formatter and that sort of thing. You know, Upwork, 99 Designs, there's some really great platforms that you can go to.
And that's where you did the cover design as well. Of course, I was forgetting about all of those other elements that come in.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, again, there are experts out there who know exactly, you know, who you can go on, you can look at their work, you can look at similar books, you can say, I kind of like this, but I want that, you know, and that sort of thing. And, you know, I found this this lovely cover designer who does all of my covers, and it's always exciting when I start a new book and I get the cover design, because then you're kind of imagining it, you know. I find that really motivating to keep looking, you know. Whenever my energy is flagging, I go and look at the cover design and go, come on, you know, it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, I'll get a list of the resources. That's a great idea, Sundari, and we'll put them in the show notes. Yeah, so that's fascinating. And is the marketing then all done through the Amazon platform as well?
So this is one of the things compared to a publishing house, and you know, those of you who naturally navigate, you know, all your socials and just sort of, you know, market naturally all the time, will be more adept at this than maybe I am. So in like my marketing approach has been, first of all, to get a nice following of people around me supporting the book, especially in the early days, right? People downloading the book, writing reviews for the book, getting a bit of a, you know, it's kind of like opening weekend at the cinema, right? You know, you want your first kind of launch weekend to be a big launch. When people go and look at your book, they want to see that there's reviews on there and all that kind of thing. So navigating as big a network, you know, ideally a couple of 100 people, to get to kind of, you know, support your book in those early days is really important. And I've always done that like organically with people that I know and people who are interested in that sort of thing. And then obviously all the things that you would imagine in terms of being out in social media, putting useful content out there, you know, not just, woo, my book is live, but like, here's 10 things you need to know about blah, you know, so being quite content driven and quite useful, obviously pulling people in towards your website, you know, going to the book, all that kind of thing. Again, a lot of you will understand this very naturally and organically. There are, you know, websites where you can promote your book, where you can run, you know, discounts and offers and all that kind of thing if you want to get a bit of volume behind your book. What obviously what you don't get if you self-publish versus if you're with a publishing house is that sort of PR and media push, right? So, winning the W.H. Smith Award or being featured in a particular magazine and that sort of thing. There's lots of freelance PR out there. There are PR houses that will help you with this, and PR for authors that will help you do this. I'm still navigating my way through some of that as well, and finding what works and what doesn't work. And you can see, and obviously, doing things like this, going on as many podcasts and webinars as you can, getting your message out there, especially in front of your readership. So, for example, with Risky Women was amazing for me, right? Or like the GARP or IRM, and those, all those kind of risk networks are where I want CRO to be, and then similarly people networks and COO networks as well. So you can do a lot of that organically. You can pay for some PR, and/or then obviously the publishing houses would offer something else as well.
Yeah, interesting. Any questions from anyone?
Actually, tons of it. But sorry, I need to go for a workshop. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'll quietly slip out and I'll maybe trouble you in person.
We can share.
I was gearing up to answer a load of questions. Okay. Nice to meet you.
Just in terms of actually the process part of it itself on the publishing, you were talking about self-publishing and sites. There's a cost element to it, which of course, it's a thing on the payback that you plan based on the sales and all that. There's that part of it, but there's also the publicity side of it, right? In terms of how much before, how long did it take you to write the book itself and things like that?
Are you sticking around for the answer, Sundari, or do you?
Yeah, I'll be here I'll be here for that 1 minute. Please tell me.
There were 3 questions in there. Which one do you want an answer to?
Whichever one calls out to you. And
okay. Oh, and Diane needs to go as well. Not to worry. Nice
thank you so much. Just had to jump for another firefighting.
So. On LinkedIn if you want to answer any questions and that kind of thing.
Sure, will do. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. In terms of how long, obviously it depends. It depends on how much you know your subject matter. It depends on how much research you need. It depends on if you're full-time or if you're not. I have tried to sort of do the bulk of my writing over about a 4-month period, and I would easily add 2 months after that for editing and getting everything ready for launch and that kind of thing. Obviously it can take a lot longer than that if you're having to do an awful lot of research, but that was in a full-time role. That was what I was doing.
Great. Thank you, and I'll catch you later. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
I guess I had a few kind of questions about what do you think has been the best thing for you about writing the books? Because you mentioned, some people are doing it to sort of showcase their business or whatever. And you obviously started with there was a gap and there wasn't anything there. But, what do you feel has been the best things about writing the books?
There's a couple of things. The creation of something from nothing is incredibly satisfying. I think especially for those of us who work in intangible industries like financial services and that sort of thing, it is incredibly rewarding to create something. And honestly, like, the first time your paperback arrives and the first time you can hold it in your hand, there is a huge satisfaction in that, and in putting something out there. But more so than that, I think for me, it is the concept of helping people and paying it forward and sharing the expertise that I garnered along the way. So, and almost weekly, I will get a message or an email from someone going like, "Thank you so much. Your book really helped me. I'm just starting on my journey," and that sort of thing. And those days I have a smile on my face for the rest of the day after that. So it's it's a very satisfying adjunct, I think, to my kind of professional career, and one that I may look to sort of develop more now as I look forward.
And have the books created sort of new opportunities that you didn't imagine? Because I know, like, you now get a lot of requests from different publications to write articles and panels and all sorts of things.
Yeah, that's right. I do some writing for an FT publication called Banking Risk and Regulation. So that's been, and again, for someone who never considered herself a writer, that's incredible to me, and it's great. And again, one of the huge benefits of that is it kind of gives you an excuse or a reason to talk to anyone that you want to. You say, oh, I want to research skill sets for AI for the future, and like some of the people that I've been put in touch with are just it's just amazing. So it's kind of an open door and an invitation to be curious and to speak to people. So that's been fabulous. People have asked me about coaching, about online courses, about audibles and all that kind of thing. So that's something that I'm just weighing up at the moment as to what would be the most useful for people and where I go next. But it's definitely opened some doors, as well as being a kind of a standalone, thing a thing I've created.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought the same thing about podcasts as well, that,
Yeah.
so many people, you'd approach them and say, hey, will you do this podcast with me? And you would just get access to people that, might not want to have a meeting with you, but they're very happy to do a
Very
podcast.
happy to jump on a podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Penny, you've got your hand up, so go for it.
Thank you. Hi, Jenny. Good to see you again. Quick question. I know you mentioned when you first launched, just to have a good, strong launch, have a good network of people reading, writing the reviews and so forth. I just wondered, how often would you need to keep marketing to kind of supplement your sales, or would that be your additional podcasts that you're doing, or did you do anything else just to give it a little boost every now and then? Because what it's like, the hype kind of dies down after a while, and you need to kind of remind people the book's out there as well.
Yeah, great question. So first of all, your launch is extremely important in terms of like, it almost kind of sets you at a level, if you know what I mean, within Amazon. And I don't know if it's like how the algorithms then pick up the book after that and everything else as well. So a strong launch really does set you up well for some ongoing sales. And there's things like Amazon ads that you can pay for as well, where your product gets placed. Like, if someone is looking at a book on operations, they might see my book, and that sort of thing. So there's that, and to a large extent, I mean, that sort of takes care of itself then, basically, if you've got a good tailwind from your launch, and then you've got ads and everything. So for example, my first book, COO, which I wrote sort of 7 years ago, I went straight back into a full-time executive role after that. And I hardly had time to even think about it sometimes afterwards. I'm more active now, to be honest. So you do see, when you do an event, when you go and speak, that will translate into like a little boost for your sales, and or you go to an event or something like that. So yeah, to the extent that you can, every one of those activities will give your book a little boost along the way. But there is something about, my experience is they seem to kind of find a level of sales, which obviously might be a lot or might be a little, but they kind of find their place. And then, yes, everything you can do to just enhance it every now and again is obviously going to be valuable.
And Lucy is saying, what are the costs at the outset?
Yep. Your greatest outlay will be your editor, right? So the time and obviously that's a function of word count. They will operate on a per word type basis. So the longer the book, the more the editing, and also whether you need things like developmental editing, which looks at the structure and the flow of your book, versus just sort of copy editing, which is looking at your language and clarity and what you're saying. And I would always recommend a thorough proofread at the end, just for that final polish and all that kind of thing. So that's definitely going to be but I mean, that's in the realm of sort of a few thousand, pounds, in the low £1,000 in my experience for that kind of thing. There'll be a little bit on your cover designer. Let me think what else as I go through that. Your ISBN registration, there's a small fee for that and that kind of thing. But relatively speaking, the barriers to entry are fairly low. A typesetter, as well. But it's not. So yeah, it's there's an investment, but it's not kind of a life-changing one. And you should, obviously, if you picked your topic well, you would expect that to pay back.
And is it another question, Penny? or did I just
It
not?
is, yes, just on the back of that. I just wondered, for your next book, would you do the same process, Jen, or would you use AI, ChatGPT to kind of replace any maybe editor needs? I'm intrigued what authors think
Oh, you mean
of
for
AI.
editing, I suppose. So
Yeah, or anything to replace. Yeah.
I've made a commitment that my books will always be 100% organic, written by. I remember when I launched CRO, somebody dropped in a chat kind of, oh, I asked AI about the role of CRO, and there was this kind of like it wasn't wrong what came back, but it was just a sort of a word salad. I was like, what are you going to do with that? Like, there's nothing remotely actionable in there. It's so I mean, what ChatGPT is great for, I find it is brainstorming. You're thinking around a topic, and you just need some. You need some data points and ways to just kind of frame something in your head, but then you go and you write yourself. You write from your experiences. In terms of editing, honestly, Penny, I don't know. I would shy away from, I mean, I don't know enough about it and how reliable that they have become. And I think professional editor, and I've also been lucky enough to find, so for example, CPO, Chief People Officer, like we had an editor who edits for HR magazines, right? So you were kind of getting a degree of functional oversight and experience as well as the editing experience. And again, I found that a huge comfort, that just you had someone looking at that. So that won't always be possible, but I found that great along the way. So for now, I'm going to say I'm going to go with the way that I know, because
No, good question though, because everyone is bringing up using ChatGPT for content, and a lot of people say at least you're not starting with a blank sheet of paper, etc. But then it's still hallucinating, and it needs to learn from Jen's books. I'd suggest that before it knows what to tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
So curious then, because you've said you're working on the sustainability. So I guess what's next? What's happening?
So I'm fortunate enough to be partnering with the lady who wrote the GRI standards. Her name, she worked at GRI. Anna Kratova is her name, and she approached me when she saw that I had done a collaboration. She was like, "Oh, I so wanted to ask you, but I didn't think you did that, so I was afraid." But now I see you do collaborate, and so
GRI stands for
I've blanked, Kimberly. Global Initiative, GRI Sustainability. Oh my God, that's very embarrassing for someone who's writing a book right now. I use the acronym so much.
Yeah.
Global Reporting Initiative. Good Lord, that's it. And Anna will tell me off for that. Global Reporting Initiative standards. So she penned those, and so she's providing all the kind of the technical content around that. It's gonna follow the same flow as before: culture, strategy, execution, building a team, future-proofing, technology, all that kind of thing. And then Anna is laying out, her experience as a CSO, and how to approach it, and the frameworks and the standards and the policies that you set and all that kind of thing. So really excited about that. That should come out in the summer. And yeah.
And is the plan to have like every C-suite in the
that's what I would love. I would love, by the time I retire, to have a kind of a rainbow colored box set on the shelf that you could pick off, and for whichever role that you need. Obviously, it's about finding the right collaborator as well. It's finding someone with the right expertise, with the time and inclination, opportunity. I mean, it is, look, it's work. I won't lie. I mean, it's quite a commitment to sit down and write a book, and to carve that out. And then obviously to have the networks and connections and everything else that are needed. But I will keep looking, and we'll see where we go after this.
Excellent. It sounds like the encyclopedia of
Exactly.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe if I could ask a question. Yeah. Jen, amazing. I've just been, well, it's incredible what you're saying. I'm so full of admiration for you, Goodness, I'm quite overwhelmed actually. But I would like to ask a question. If sorry, can you reiterate, how long have you been doing this for? When did you do your first book? About 5 years ago, 6.
No,
Seven.
it's long. It's 7 years ago now. was
7
the
years
first
ago.
book. Yeah.
So if you could, where you are now, looking back at that first part at the very beginning 7 years ago, is there any one piece of advice that you give yourself now? Any mistakes, any learnings, any?
I mean, it's been an overwhelmingly positive
Right.
experience, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for me. I'm glad I did it when I did it. It was the right time for me. It was that moment when, you know, I sort of, I was almost losing sleep at night wanting to get this out of me. I think that's maybe another kind of
Amazing.
indication as well. And it was the same with CRO then as well, which I penned in lockdown. I was, you know, I just finished a role where I'd been acting. I'd just done the whole thing from end to end. I'd taken 270 policies from Santander and translated them into that for a fintech, you know, into 30 short, sharp, readable policies for, and my head was so full of just all of that kind of CRO knowledge that I was actually like sitting up in bed getting frustrated until I could get it out. I'm not coming up with an like I'm pleased I did
That's
it.
great, fantastic.
There have been, and if you go onto Amazon, particularly with book one, I think there was one particularly aggrieved reviewer who was just like, how dare this, you know, young slip of a thing write a book? What the hell does she know? And that kind of thing, you know. And I do remember when that review came in, you know, that feeling like a punch in my stomach, you know, after everything I put in. So there's a degree of, I mean, in terms of things you want to know, you're putting yourself out there, right? And the response has been overwhelmingly positive, you know, and you know, as I say, you know, for that one guy, I've had dozens and dozens of people come back to me and say, thank you so much, you really helped me. So but you know, there is something about putting your book out there that, you know, you do set yourself up for someone to try and knock you down as well, you know. So I suppose that's something that's a learning from along the way.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, because I mean, as Kimberly said, you know, I'm a voice and presence coach. So much of my life is around communication, but standing, walking around, moving, running workshops. So the prospect of me sitting down at a desk and actually typing just fills me with horror. But the universe is sort of telling me, you know, people have been saying this for like the last year, David, you really need to solidify all this information, get a book out, you know. And then I saw this opportunity and I thought, wow, I've got to come on this talk. So thank you. I think the stars are aligning. So thank you.
Always a good, when you're feeling that way, that is always a good sign.
Yeah.
And remember, I mean, some people, you know, if voice is your you know, stock in trade and the medium that you're most comfortable in, you can dictate, you can find good software dictation, you know, tools. You can speak into them at least to get your, you know, your the start of it, at least to, you know, to begin. And you may find that a really easy way to get down a ton of content, which then you can finesse or have someone help finesse for you. So, you know, David, I'm almost the opposite. So I've shied away from doing audibles because I know as soon as I start writing, you know, either I'll hate the sound of my own voice, or I'll go, oh, hang on, I want to wait, stop. You know, I want to fix this along the way. I think I'm mustering up the courage to do an audible, but it's all a matter of what we're most comfortable with.
Well, you've got a great voice, so there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Tick.
Yeah, very, very easy to listen to. So we're almost at the end, but that has been absolutely amazing. I think we got so many hints and tips, but if you were just going to leave us with your kind of key top tips, what would you say they are?
I would say just start. Just have a go, get a big blank sheet of paper, just map it out. Don't be afraid, don't be worried that it's rubbish or anything like that. You know, start with that mind map, get things out. You may have a couple. You may try a few different angles, and you'll probably find the one that it seems to just have the most content coming forth. So just get started. Don't think about it too much. Get that table of contents, sound that out with people, you know, use your networks and that kind of thing, and you know, and get going, and be confident that the tools are there, the experts are there, the help is there. There's a well-trodden path now for self-publishing, obviously, as well as with the publishing houses. And if you want, I mean, it's like I say, it's been a positive experience for me. I'm really pleased that I did it. You know, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh God, does this ever get, you know, and you know, by the time you get to the end of the editing process, you want a little break from it for sure. But so far, I keep coming back to do more. So it's been great.
Excellent. That is brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think, you know, some of it maybe is, you know, now kind of you feel really familiar with it, but I think for most of us, it was like, oh my goodness, how would you even start? So I think that's really useful. Thank you all for attending. And we've obviously had Lucy's gone in and out, but she's a fangirl, clearly, Jen. She's got the book, she's read the book, she loves the book. And it's obviously made a good impact there, which I think is great because that, as you said, that's really, really rewarding. So I will wrap it up. We've got lots of other events coming up, as I said, around storytelling. We've got Catherine Fox, who's from Australia. She's an award-winning journalist and author as well. She's going to kick off the writing skills course and the writing competition for us that that Beauville will sponsor. We've got Penny on as one of our ringleaders here in London. So hopefully I will see you soon, Penny. And you know, make sure that you all sort of share events and stuff. I know you're all big advocates for us as well. And we're looking forward to the next events. But Jen's on again, in case anyone wants to do too. Not a good time for Asia, but it's okay for Europe. It's, I think, 1 o'clock in the morning for us in Hong Kong and Taipei. So not ideal timing from this side of the world. But so good. That was really good. And I've picked up so many hints and tips. So I might grab some of those resources so we can share that with everyone as well.
Yeah, no, we can do that, and yeah, there's lots of bits and pieces we can chunk out from this as well, Kimberly. Yeah, no, it's great. Listen, it's been a pleasure. I love talking about it. Here to help. Find me on LinkedIn if you want to chat, or my website, which is coo-author.com. But we'll share some stuff afterwards, Kimberly.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. And links
until the next time.
Where to buy the books in case you want to become a COO or CRO.
Who knows? Thank you all.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kimberly, for setting it up. Wonderful.
Pleasure.
Brilliant.
And thanks for all your questions. Really, really good. Made the session very interactive. And Jen, we look forward to the next one as well.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
All righty. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
And maybe Kimberly, stay for 2 seconds if you've got it. Yeah.
I will do. And
cool.
I will.
That was good.
Hang on. How can I? Hang on. I need to.
Stop recording.
Stop recording. Stop recording. God. Why not? There we go.